museum friends, it's Nat here with a wonderful tour of the Roberson Mansion. Thank you for joining me on this museum from home tour as we bring you the museum from the comfort of your couch. And hopefully y'all are staying safe. But today we are going to take a tour of the Roberson Mansion servants' quarters. But before we dive in and go into the servants' quarters, I want to take a little bit of time to explore why is this mansion, what is this mansion, when was it built, who was it built by. As you can probably tell from earlier on in the video, I mentioned the name Roberson. That's probably gives you a good indication of who built it, and you'd be right. It was built by Alonzo and Margaret Roberson, and I'm going to turn the camera around here to show you. This is Alonzo and Margaret Roberson, and this mansion was built in the early 1900s. Why was it built? Well, Alonzo and Margaret Roberson had a very wonderful, very nice home on Main Street here in Binghamton, and they decided that there was an interesting trend happening. They saw there were a lot of influential people that they wanted to live next to moving to Front Street. And so Alonzo Roberson bought two properties on Front Street. Both had houses on them, and he demolished both of them to build his very extravagant mansion. I'm gonna kind of back out here. This is the foyer and obviously the grand staircase of Roberson Mansion. So he was very determined to live here, and that might be because he wanted to be near a lot of influential people who were moving to this part of the neighborhood, like the Kilmers of Swamp Root, the Davages, the Roses, and he wanted to associate himself with the upper class. So this house was built in Binghamton, and Binghamton, New York was at the turn of the century becoming quite up-and-coming neighborhood. But unlike a lot of the new wealth that was coming into, I guess, a lot of Americans' pockets at the time through, unfortunately, the Civil War and new opportunities with factories and industrialization, fortunately, I suppose, for that, there were, in New York City, there were people like the Astors, who were the old money, who were kind of safeguarding social clubs from this new money and only letting a few people in that they deemed worthy. Whereas Binghamton didn't really have that. They didn't have old wealth that was safeguarding certain spaces. So it was really up to all these people who were becoming the new wealthy to come in and become the social guardians and the elite of Binghamton. So there was a lot of opportunity here to become, I guess, the leaders of the Binghamton area. And Alonzo Roberson had a similar story to a lot of people that were just gaining their wealth at the time. He was what would be described as one generation, perhaps, from overalls. His father was a carpenter, and he saved up enough money to buy a lumber mill, and then Alonzo Roberson took his father's business from a local lumber company to an international one through the opportunities that new rails that were coming through, being built in Binghamton, provided and offered. So he was taking advantage of a lot of the opportunities that were here. And he wanted to build a mansion that was a reflection of his status. So your home is a reflection of yourself. Think of that, how your home is a reflection of yourself, perhaps. But yeah, this home is quite extravagant. The foyer is very open and big. But let's talk about the architecture of this home and what it represents. So if you look at this big open space, this is a public space. And we can see from the architecture of Roberson Mansion that there are three distinct spaces. There's the public space, like this foyer. There are the private spaces, like the breakfast nook that we were just in, and the bedrooms and things like that. And then there are the service spaces, which are the servants' quarters. And that's specifically what we're going to talk about today, is the servants' quarters and how that architecture looked and what it meant, and maybe how it may have made people feel. Because if you think about it, you're living and working here. You live where you work. So that's kind of an interesting thing. So I'm going to turn around the camera here. I'm going to show you one of the kind of a little bit of the architecture, give you an example of what I'm talking about, of the architecture of the space and what it meant. So here you have these handy dandy, this leads to the kitchen area of Roberson Mansion, so you could feed in food and drink, or, you know, feed out the dirty dishes. And you also have a door right here that the servants can enter and exit through. So very much a not seen, not heard, get in and out as quickly as you can. And I want to kind of, I guess, underscore like the detail and the extravagance. So you have these very detailed stairs, you have these beautiful columns. So this house was built in an Italian Renaissance revival style, which a lot of people at the time, you know, a lot of the elite thought that they were bringing about America's Renaissance. Mark Twain probably would have disagreed with them, as he coined the term Gilded Age, which means to cover in a thin sheet of gold to hide what's really underneath. But you decide which is a more apt description. So we're going to, so underscoring the extravagance of that, I want to highlight the kind of dullness. This is one of the service quarters, service entry points. So you see very dull gray walls. The hallway is a little bit thinner, not as open. And I also want to highlight something that most people miss. This is a sliding door. So you kind of slide it closed, and people come in, and they don't even notice that there's a servant's entry point there. So definitely kind of out of sight, out of mind. And now I'm going to take you to where the servants lived. So we're going to go through here, and we're going to pass by very quickly the kitchen area, because those are for the in real life tours. Can't show you that, I've been told. But we're going to climb up the steps, and sorry if I get a little bit winded, we're going to climb up the steps here to where the servants lived. And through this access point, through these stairs, you could get up to every single floor, which also provided access points to the bedroom. So there's these like, almost like little estuaries throughout the mansion that, where the servants could go and, you know, service different areas and kind of work behind the scenes, which is pretty interesting. Very intelligent architecture, I guess, if you're looking to hide something. But yes, so you can see here very thin hallways, very big windows. So here's another highlight, is Roberson Mansion was built with combined gas and electric. And at the time, electricity was a little unreliable, not the super best, not like it is today. And gas lighting didn't provide a lot of light, provided enough maybe to know when you're bumping into something. And as you can see, the servants' quarters are rather closed off. So you have these big windows to let light in, so the servants can at least not bump into things or trip over anything. So, yeah. And I'm going to turn the camera around here to start giving you a better view. We're going to go all the way up to the 3rd floor. So you can see very, very thin stairwell. And this is pretty cool. I like this. I like to highlight this. So there's a window here, and then there's an interior window. There's an interior window right here, and that's to let light in, which is pretty cool. Very considerate. So, all right, and here is one of the bedrooms where the servants would have laid down their head at night. And as you can see, it has been used in the past as an office, Right now we largely use the servants' quarters as storage, but we have this room cleaned out to help show you, yeah, what it was like. Just turn the camera back around here, and so as you can see, it's not very big. Give you some perspective. I can touch the ceiling, and I am a whopping 5'3", just to give you a little bit of a sense. It's really no bigger than maybe a smaller version of a college dorm, maybe a first studio apartment, perhaps. So yeah, this is the servants' quarters. This is where you could lay your head at night. And one of the questions we usually get about, or we oftentimes get about the servants, is, did they have a good life here? And that is a really good question. Did the servants working in Roberson Mansion have a good life? And we have a few oral histories that say that they were nice. What we do know is that the servants who did work here, a lot of them died, passed away while they were still working for the Robersons. So they had people who worked for them for a very long time, which in terms of employee retention is quite good, which is a good thing, and leads us to believe that servants did indeed have a good life. A few other indicators that we have that servants may have had a very good life here, in comparison to maybe the rest of the servants in America, is they had 2 half days off every week. So they had a half day Thursday and a half day on Sunday for church, to have to themselves, to socialize. And that wasn't the standard at the time. There were, from what I've read, there's most of the time servants only got a half day every other Sunday off, which isn't a lot of time to socialize. Must feel very isolated here, but that wasn't the case. And so servants here, this was a pretty good job especially for immigrants, people coming to America, because you get a roof over your head, you get food, and you get a little bit of a wage that maybe you can send home to support your family, or maybe help you start building a life here. And from what we can tell, the servants who worked here probably didn't receive, or usually servants at the time didn't receive wages that were higher than those at, say, the factory. Like factory workers would get paid quite a bit more than servants, but that was because you got room and board. But I guess you can decide whether or not that's fair. But yeah, so from what we can tell, the servants really did have a good life. In comparison, we do have testimonies that apparently Alonzo Roberson's stepmother wasn't a very good employer. Sarah Elizabeth Dunk was Alonzo Roberson's father's second wife, and Alonzo Roberson's stepmother. And apparently we have read that she was rather cruel to some of her servants. There's testimonies that she wouldn't let them eat until after work was done. And apparently one servant had stuffed some snacks in her pockets to kind of have something to nibble on throughout the day. And Sarah found out and reached for her pockets, grabbed them, and crushed her snacks to dust. So not the nicest woman in the world. So it runs the gamut. You have people like Sarah Elizabeth Dunk as employers, or the Robersons at the time, which is an interesting spectrum to see. And you can only imagine maybe what life was like for other people who were working for the upper class. But yeah, so this is the servants' quarters. And thank you for coming with me on this wonderful tour. I will work on bringing you these videos every Tuesday, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.